New Delhi's neat geometric pattern of streets is laid out around a main axe called the Raj Path. The British designed most of the administrative buildings, including the Parliament. The city was actually the capital of the British Indies at the beginning of the 20th century. The grandeur of Victorian architecture is visible throughout the city. In spite of the proclamation of independence in 1947, New Delhi remained the most occidental of all the Indian cities with its wide boulevards and vast open green parks. The eastern end of the Raj Path finishes with the India Gate, a monument that was raised in honor of the many Indian soldiers who lost their lives during the First World War. The memorial stands guard over the unknown soldier. Traffic circulates smoothly through Connaught Place, where the old British colony and the India of today meet. Elegant Englishwomen strolled in the shade of the column-lined promenade to avoid the blazing sun. Traditional businesses gave way to the computer industry, which is recorded to have an annual growth of more than 50%. Traditional India is never far away, and its mode of transportation, always very useful, adapts to traffic. Animals are respected here, and the traffic doesn't disturb them. Most of the time. One begins to feel the density of the population when one enters Old Delhi. When going down the main commercial avenue, Chandni Chowk, one really gets a feel for the pulse of India. In May 2000, India officially topped 1 billion inhabitants. It has the largest population after China. A child is born every second in India. The Muslims who arrived from Afghanistan made Delhi into the capital of an empire at the end of the 12th century. They built the first Muslim city in the country, Qutub Minar, a civil and religious compound. The Muslims erected a monumental tower here as a symbol of their strength and faith. The structure, decorated with passages from the Quran, serves as the minaret to the neighboring mosque. During the 16th century, the descendants of the first Muslims initiated the Mughal Empire, one of the most brilliant of all India's history. The Emperor, Humayun, received an extraordinary mausoleum made from red sandstone and white marble. The size and color of the red fort comes from the sandstone used to build it during the 17th century, where Mughal Empire Shah Jahan reigned for 30 years. The cultivated and refined emperor maintained a dazzling court at the time the first European colonists arrived. The old quarter of Nizamuddin is a reminder that India possesses the second largest Islamic community in the world after Indonesia. However, it only represents 1/10 of the total population, which is not homogeneous since the Muslims live mostly in the north and south of the country. The minarets of the Jama Masjid Mosque have stood at the very heart of Old Delhi since the 17th century. Built by Shah Jahan, it is the largest mosque in India. The Sikhs, with their colorful turbans, beards, and long mustaches, their symbols and well-guarded temples, form a community with a strong presence, even if they make up less than 2% of the population. Their religion is very accommodating.
Sikh religion very open religion, no caste system, everybody equal. And Sikh is believe in one God, and God is everybody same, no special name God. God is name God.
A common rule that symbolizes success within the community are public acts of charity.
Every Sikh temple very big kitchen. And every day this place 20,000, 30,000 people every day eat food, breakfast, dinner, lunch, and very big hospital, free medicine, school, college, institute here.
Everyone is welcome in a Sikh temple as long as they have a sense of respect towards others. Another symbol? The Lotus Temple. 45 lotus petals form the walls of the Baha'i temple. The structure, as is the case with all Baha'i temples, symbolizes comprehension, oneness, and unity. Next to the Pakistani border to the northwest of the country lies the state of Rajasthan, a land of kings and of cities with legendary names. Udaipur was left behind in regards to modern India's evolution, probably because it is so isolated. Udaipur is a city that upholds its traditions. Nicknamed the City of Aurora, it is bathed in an aura of romanticism. In the Sahelian Kibari garden, an employee opens the sprinkler system that was installed during the 18th century. The garden, destined for the Queen's Maids of Honor, is an ideal background for photos. The procession leads to the lake's edge. Even though the occasion is a funeral, the atmosphere is a joyful one. The corpse of a local dignitary has recently been incinerated at Benares on the banks of the Ganges. The ashes are to be scattered into the sacred river. The family then brings some river water with them back to Udaipur so that the dignitary's friends can honor him one last time. Women do their wash on the banks of Lake Pishola, which borders the old city established in the 16th century and once surrounded by a stone wall, even though it doesn't have a history of warfare. There are no austere castles here, but the ethereal city palace. The palace, with its history-laden walls and gardens, was built over 500 meters of marble and granite. Huge cages served to trap tigers during a time of memorable hunts conducted while riding elephants. The interior of the palace court is a labyrinth of courtyards and hallways. The brutal sunlight is filtered through well-placed openings or reflected by mirrors and glass-colored mosaics, as is the case at More Chowk, a courtyard with beautiful peacocks. Elephant fights were a passion of the Indian princes. They were not beasts of burden, but warriors that were immortalized in the miniatures. Miniature art has found a truly favorable niche at Udaipur. The art form has its roots in the Mughal era of the 16th century. It is inspired by the pictorial style practiced in Persia.
We follow the same method of coloring used during the 17th and 18th century. See, the colors used for the miniatures are always the same mineral and natural colors of the stones. The unique characteristic of these paintings is that the colors do not run or age.
The miniatures can be made on various materials, but paper is the most ancient. The artists get their inspiration from the beautiful surroundings, like the celebrated lake palace in the middle of Pishola Lake. The Udaipur princes entertained their foreign guests here. Today, it has been transformed into a luxury hotel. Not far away, the Jag Mandir was built at the beginning of the 17th century. 8 marble elephants stand guard at the entrance to the enchanting palace that was reserved for the pleasure of the princes. The building acted as a refuge to the future Mughal Emperor Shah Jahan. He appreciated the tranquility of Lake Pishola, which was formed by a nearby dam. Rajasthan gets its fundamental resources from agriculture, even though it is at the center of a region that is rapidly being invaded by the desert. Since mechanization is rudimentary, most of the work is done manually. This is the case at the factory where saris are made. On construction sites, everything is done by hand, from shaping the rocks to masonry. The least qualified form of labor is done by women, who support not only their families, but cumbersome burdens as well. Their duties are to perform all the most tedious tasks, beginning with hauling the daily water supply. Even so, they never lose their simple elegance. In Rajasthan, only 19% of the land is irrigated, and the villages that are equipped with a system of water ducts can be counted on your fingers. It is a serious problem, and the earth of the northwest isn't sufficiently watered by the monsoon rains. There are years when it doesn't rain at all. The reason being that the monsoon clouds originating in the east at the Bay of Bengal, 2,000 kilometers away, have been emptied long before they arrive here. It isn't rare to find norias or bucket water wheels in the Rajasthan countryside. This archaic but efficient system has been used over the centuries to compensate for the lack of rainwater. If an animal cannot generate power, it falls again on the women to take over, like here, assisting the roadside blacksmiths. Here, a life of labor leaves its mark. Even if iron is abundant in India, silver is extremely rare. Rajasthan produces 80% of India's silver. Silversmiths from the area are masters when it comes to working the precious metal, for the pleasure of one and all. The pilgrims, with their phantom-like appearance, have their mouths covered to protect them from swallowing insects. They are Jains. This religion strictly prohibits the killing of any living being. Ranakpur is the most remarkable of the Jain sanctuaries, whose religion began 6 centuries BC. Before entering, one must remove all articles made of leather, since to make it, an animal must have died. Priests make sure that the rules are understood and respected.
So Jains believe in non-violence, peace and purity, and we believe in non-ahimsa. Mahatma Gandhi was also follower of this particular principle, ahimsa, live and let live. The Jain people comes to the temple, we make swastika which has 4 lines, heaven, hell, human, animal. If you want to be gate free from the reincarnation, we need 3 things in our life: right vision, right character and right knowledge. Then our soul goes to moksha, nirvana.
Near the temple's entrance and protected by the benevolent beliefs of the Jain religion, a clan of monkeys finds a hospitable retreat. But one is never completely satisfied. On the road to the Arawali Hills, another member of the monkey family prepares an ambush. Where breakfast is being served. And to quench the thirst, a hole in the radiator comes in handy. A little patience. Get out of the way. A little sip for the road. There's enough for everyone. Mount Abu, situated at an altitude of 1,200 meters, offers another worship place for the Jain. The Jains do not lack for paradoxes. They must avoid being attached to material wealth, but that doesn't prevent them from doing business and getting rich. Small businesses have flourished on this slope, and it has become a desirable attraction for the local people. Businesses operate without giving much thought to brand name laws. A must for honeymooning couples is a visit to Mount Abu. The photographer's catalog is stuffed with snapshots of young lovers who meet to watch the most romantic sunset in India. It can be chilly at 1,700 meters of altitude as the day draws to a close, but the reward is worth the wait. The roads to Rajasthan are not long, silent rivers. Animals and overloaded vehicles crowd the whole length of the highway, sometimes reducing visibility to 0. Blowhorn is a technique devised by truck drivers to clear the way. Whether it's allowed or not, blowing your horn won't change anything. It's a question of luck. The blue city of Jodhpur, like a field of lavender, is nestled next to a fortified hill, one of the most impregnable strongholds of the nation. The Mehrangarh citadel, built by a Rajput prince whose lineage gave its name to Rajasthan, warded off invaders since the 15th century. Behind the chiseled walls of red sandstone, a museum exhibits evidence of bitter battles the building was witness to. It still belongs to the Maharaja of Jodhpur. Time seems to have stopped in the old city that hasn't changed much over the last 5 centuries. But progress catches up even here. The bustling Sardar market keeps pace with the times without disturbing tradition. Spices are an essential item. Indian cuisine calls for dozens of different spices depending on the dish or the need. Just beyond Jodhpur, the green vegetation gradually gives way to the barren Thar desert. Bishnoi villages begin to pop up here and there. The Bishnoi community was founded during the 15th century, and their doctrine sanctions the strict protection of nature. They are a wealthy people and own their own land. Many of the women wear elaborate jewelry. Trucks have taken the place of caravans, but going the distance on foot is still a common mode of travel. The desert thrives. Hunting is forbidden. Antelope and wild cows graze peacefully. The peacock, Rajasthan's symbolic bird, seems to be a little nervous, like the pink flamingos that fly off at the slightest movement. The main food of the dromedaries is often limited to the small leaves of the thorny acacia or locust tree, which are no obstacle for their strong jaws. Life often hangs by a thread, carefully braided from dromedary hair. The Thar Desert, from a geological perspective, forms part of the desert belt that begins in the Sahara and ends at the Gobi Desert. It presents a serious menace to Rajasthan as it is constantly expanding to the detriment of surrounding fertile land. The caravans brought Jaisalmer its fortune, a mirage city that emerged from the depths of the Thar Desert around the 12th century. The thick walls of the yellow sandstone fortress hide a delicately sculpted palace and a labyrinth of narrow streets teeming with merchants. Opium, indigo, spices, jewelry, textiles, and carpets pass through here on their way to the west. Prosperous businessmen have built illustrious dwelling places known as havelis. The merchants concealed their riches and their women from the sun and indiscreet stares behind the havelis' extravagant decor. One of the sure signs of virility is to show off your mustache, the longest in the world. Bikaner, situated north of Rajasthan, also possesses its own majestic fortress. The city has never known the monsoons, and the simplicity of the old quarter contrasts with the splendor of certain buildings. The Maharaja still lives in his palace, partly sectioned off to exhibit his car collection and his personal railroad car. The ornate entrance of the Bishnoi temple is an inspiration to photographers. The challenge is to capture the bride's smile. The temple was dedicated to a female mystic in the 15th century who lived to be 150 years old and decreed that members of her caste would reincarnate in the form of a rat. Within the protective interior of the temple, hundreds of rats scurry about. There are other explanations for the origin of the rats.
Vishnu saved a boy who fell into the river. He told the boy, "Whoever comes here never dies and will become a believer." After he died, the boy returned, reincarnated as a rat. That's where the Temple of Rats comes from.
In the Shekhawati region to the north of Rajasthan, the village of Samad also conserves the frescoes that decorate the houses of wealthy merchants. The 18th century palace has been magnificently restored and converted into a hotel. The decoration on the inside gives us an indication of the luxury and refinement lived by the princes of that time. Reminiscent of the 1001 Nights, the painted woodwork and the subtle interplay of mirrors tell the story of the house and its occupants. The Kimsar fort has profited from the same restoration by transforming a fortress with an impregnable reputation into a prestigious hotel. South of Jodhpur, herds of antelope bring vitality to the barren land that is threatened by the advancing desert dryness. Jaipur, Rajasthan's capital, is entirely built with rose-colored stones. The color changes intensity depending on the time of day. Jaipur is considered a young city according to Indian standards, since it was built after the 18th century. The city is a hubbub of activity. The sadhu, who have given up all material possessions, seek gifts to support themselves in the final stage of their life. The Palace of the Winds, the city's most famous building, borders on architectural madness. The elaborate facade allowed a secluded harem an opportunity to watch unseen and observe life on the streets below. The Maharaja of Jaipur built an observatory to indulge his passion for astronomy. He thought he could make more accurate calculations with the help of larger instruments. Albert Hall was built in the 19th century based on a Hindu-Muslim style. Today, it is a museum. The pursuit of architecture in Jaipur is omnipresent, even at the movies. Hand-painted giant posters annually attract 2 billion spectators. India has the largest film industry in the world. Persian designs, colors, and methods of fabrication inspired Indian carpet making. The British supported this industry, which provided work for prisoners. Akbar, the third Mughal emperor, introduced the Persian carpet making technique into India at the end of the 16th century. But the English themselves slowed the development of the Indian carpet industry when they favored cotton. Jaipur is well known for the quality of its carpets.
These are the best carpet which we produce in India, the Kashmiri woolen carpet. And more you walk on top of the carpet, the design and color that come out much better and bright. And we are having some traditional design, and the design which is from the family, from the Rajasthan itself, we collect from the family design.
Before it was part of a tapestry, the tiger dearly defended its skin during the hunts organized on elephants' backs. The elephant has always held a privileged place in India. The word Kornak is originally from Sri Lanka. Ganesh is the elephant god in the Hindu religion, a kind of guardian angel worshipped under all circumstances. A guardian with an obliging nature if one can judge by the games he is subjected to. The Amber Fort hugs the edge of a cliff about 10 kilometers from Jaipur. It was built during the middle of the 16th century and occupied a strategic position on the way to Delhi. It is only after crossing several enclosures that we finally get to the interior. There, all eyes are drawn to the mosaic mirrors and the lattice-worked windows. An armed attack? A victim smeared with blood? No. It's Holi, the festival of colors, celebrated in March all over India, especially in the north. People celebrate the end of winter, life, and love with the help of colorful powders.
It depicts the victory of victory of good over evil. Okay, so here what happens, from the very first rays of the morning, people start playing Holi, apply colors on each other's faces, and they enjoy. It's totally fun time today.
A day of colorful joy that no one can escape from, not even the cows or the tourists. Holi is above all a celebration of fraternity, and it is done enthusiastically. Collective folly or good-natured folklore, when it comes to taste and color, to each his own. Leaving Rajasthan by the northeast, North India runs parallel to the full length of the Ganges basin, 2 times the size of France, and one of the most populated plains in the world. Gwalior, the first stop towards the east, is about 350 kilometers from Jaipur. "830,000 inhabitants and countless auto rickshaws. These bug-like taxis look like they just came out of the film Mad Max. Jain sculptures carved out of sandstone rigidly overlook the road to the citadel. Their traits correspond to those of the Jain patriarchs, the Tirthankaras from the 15th century. A 9th century temple continues to intrigue experts because there is still doubt in regards to its origin. Is it Hindu or Jain? Overlooking the city at a height of 100 meters, the fortress masks the exquisite temples and palaces. The Man Mandir Palace was considered more a charming home than a fortress. The enamel tiles and animal patterns could be the decoration for a nursery. Some animals were meant to be decorative, others not. The city of Agra has a huge suburban area giving a feeling of space. The Sinkandra Mausoleum combines red sandstone with white marble and is about 10 kilometers from the city center. The 99 names of Allah are sculpted into the stone. The red fort, made of the same material in a more scarlet tone, affirms the determination of the Mughal Empire under Akbar's reign in the 16th century. On the inside, the Jahangir Palace's extraordinarily carved columns and capitals are almost entirely Hindu. At the summit, the eyes are drawn to the mystical vision of the Taj Mahal. The Taj is a radiant tribute to love from the Emperor Shah Jahan to his wife Mumtaz Mahal, who died giving birth to their 9th child. Fatpur Sikri, 40 kilometers from Agra, was the capital of the Mughal Empire for almost 10 years. Nevertheless, Akbar gave its empire an unusual glow by associating Muslim, Buddhist, and even Christian ornamental elements, symbols of the 3 religions under the empire. The chamber for private audience, with its central pillar covered by remarkably intricate carvings, is unique to India. The life expectancy rate at the beginning of the 20th century was not more than 19 years of age. The same situation occurred in France during Louis XIV's reign. Today it is over 60 years of age, so the population has increased by 90% in half a century, while the birth rate has dropped. With so many mouths to feed, and in spite of a rudimentary approach, agriculture provides enough food for the country to be self-sufficient. One of the main exports is the sugarcane. On the rustic outskirts beside a bend in the Betwa River, the capital of an old princely state founded during the 17th century is kept out of sight behind the village of Orcha. The palace bears witness to the magnificent city that was abandoned only a century after the foundation was laid. 200 kilometers further east, in the middle of the Madhya Pradesh plain and rising out of the lush vegetation, is a magnificent assembly of temples that were built between the 9th and the 12th century. Hindu or Jain, the Khajuraho temples are remarkably preserved. An infinite number of sculptures summarize the everyday life of gods, princes, warriors, disciples, and dancers, lavishly detailed on several parallel shelves. In this jungle of multiple associations, the tourist guides find inventive ways to point out an object of special interest. Curiosity seekers come from a great distance to admire close up the somewhat varied erotic scenes that perk up the sandstone with suggestive poses. Not at all shocking for the locals. Don't forget that the Kama Sutra, a philosophical erotic treaty, was written in India. The libertine reputation of Khajuraho is rather distorted, since the erotic sculptures represent only 5% of the entire work. But quality beats quantity. This delicate national heritage is carefully looked after, invariably with simple means accompanied by a lot of goodwill. The Ganges, a god who came down from heaven to give life to the earth. Benares as the dawn breaks across the sacred river. The faithful give thanks to the river, union of earth and fire. Offerings of flowers and candles are made, and then a cleansing bath. We pray for those we hold dear by reciting their names. After drinking the river's water, the believer finds himself in a purified state. Every day, millions of men and women follow these rituals in the city of salvation and hope. The water of the Ganges is without a doubt a source of spiritual purity for tens of millions of Indians. Biologically speaking, that's another story, but here, body and soul are one. The pilgrims arrive at Benares with the secret hope to eventually return and die here. On the stairs that lead to the riverbank, the dead are cremated so the smoke from their burning bodies will rise to the heavens as a final offering. But Benares is also a thriving metropolis with more than 1 million inhabitants. Varanasi is the true name of the city and comes from the joining of Varuna and Asi, two rivers that flow into the Ganges at this location. On the edge of the water, tiny rafts carry the secret wishes of the believers. The most frequent wish is to have a son or, for a married woman, to die before her husband. When night falls, a gathering of pilgrims invade the steps for a final homage to the river. The acrid smoke a reminder of the cremation. On the pyre, the god Shiva himself whispers in the ear of the deceased that death is just a journey. The train is the most economic way of travel in India. However, the distance is often so far that it's a good idea to restore one's strength. India has one of the most intricate railroad networks in the world. On top of it, there is no better way to meet the general population. and to get to know their habits. "270 kilometers towards the east of Benares, the train heads for Patna. Built beside the Ganges, Patna was once the capital of an empire, but time has taken its toll and diminished its glory. Following the course of the Ganges all the way to the delta, one arrives at Calcutta, the capital of West Bengal. This megalopolis is a delight for some and a nightmare to others. A nightmare because this former capital of the British Indies before Delhi certainly has atrocious traffic. "12 million inhabitants struggled to get around amidst the chaos and the noise. Literally stuffed with human beings, the old city chokes from the tropical heat at only 6.5 meters above sea level. The flower market is open day and night, providing the essential element for multiple offerings. Flowers have their place just like any other trade. Businesses are distributed throughout the city according to their merchandise. In Calcutta, all activities including the most cultivated can be practiced anywhere, even on the sidewalk. On principle, the famous rickshaws have been prohibited since 1997. The Communist Party found them demeaning and thought they should be done away with. However, the strength of arms and legs has been the last resort for the most deprived. At the beginning of the 1950s, a petite nun welcomed here the most desperate. Mother Teresa, who is considered a saint around the world, died in 1997. In Calcutta, ideas clash. Mother Teresa lived next to the formidable Hindu goddess Kali. The goddess's cruelty was no hindrance to her being honored in a temple dedicated to her. We tie flowers and a pebble to a tree in the temple. Couples who would like to have a child practice the ritual. It's hard to find space in this overpopulated city, and every day over 1 million people cross over the Ganges on the old Howrah Bridge in an endless flow. The ferry offers another option, but the mob is equally as dense. To ease the weight of the public transit system, a new bridge has been built, a symbol of modernism and power for this city which was once the heart of the Indian Empire. It was from here that the British administrated their empire. The evidence can be seen in a true Victorian quarter, unyielding and reserved. It was renamed BBD Bag, using the initials of the 3 heroes of the independence. Proud of their history, North India preserves its unique architectural legacy with the same passion as it does its popular traditions. In the hustle and bustle of life, the past and the present are united to design the future of a country that is above all a kingdom, an empire of the senses.